to do without without the share, which actually just a few words which many of you are probably familiar with, and that is that Hillel said, "Al tifrosh min hatzibur," do not separate yourself from the community. Very famous line. Do not separate yourself from the community. This next Mishnah is in terms of our structure of how the Pirkei Avos is working. So till now, we've been going generation to generation from the time all the way back to Moshe. It went all the way down, and the last one was Rabban Gamliel, which is taking us into the actually the Roman period already. And now we're going backwards because Hillel was actually a great grandfather. So we're going back. And the reason we're going back is because we had some discussions about community leaders, according to this, and now we're going to be talking about the community itself. So, and even according to some opinions, this is direction to the community leaders. So the idea of not separating from the community, Rashi famously and the Rav Bartanura, they quote from the Talmud that tells us that when the community is going through tough times, you should be joining with them. Because sometimes it happens is, we're doing just fine. The community is not doing so well. I may be very wealthy, or I may be in a place where I can kind of, hide, shelter in place, and everyone else is suffering. So we should be joining with them in their troubles. And also if bad things, sad things are happening, we should join with them in their suffering. And the Gemara quotes from the book of Yeshaya, Isaiah, that if you join with them in their suffering, you will rejoice with them. You will also, that when the time comes to rejoice, you'll be able to rejoice with them. But if you don't join them in the time of suffering, then you're not going to be able to participate in the salvation and the joy either. If you're not part of the community, if you're not gonna go with them in the tough times, you're not gonna be part of the good times either. And Rabbeinu Yonah points out in terms of joining the community. So one of the things people like to say is, "Oh, you got to join the community, do what everyone else is doing." That is true when they're doing good things. So when the community is engaged in acting properly, then 100% you should make sure that you are part of that. And in fact, we have an idea which is very popular on Purim in the sense of we call Berov Hadras Melech, that with the greater people, a greater amount of people is glory to the king. And that's one of the reasons it's very good to be able to have large gatherings when you're doing mitzvot. So let's say the Megillah reading in a large gathering is a good thing if you can. And that's that idea. However, that's only true when it's glory to the king, when it's doing something that Hashem is going to appreciate. If you're doing things that Hashem does not appreciate, then the bigger the crowd, the worse it is, in which case you should not be part of that. And sometimes people use that as an argument. Well, look, everyone's doing it, so you should do it. No, if everyone's doing the wrong thing, you should not be participating. Tiferes Yisrael, he understands this in terms of that idea of a community leader. And these are really instructions, according to him, to the community leader, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, do not separate from the community. How the community leader separate from the community. So he points out 5 ideas. Says one is the customs of the community. Don't separate yourself from the customs of the community. If there's a certain custom that the community doesn't, we know very much in Jewish life, there's minhagim, right? There are customs, and we have many different customs. There are Sephardic customs, Ashkenazi customs, different countries, different places, right? Lots of different customs. So if you're living in a certain place, then you should be part of the customs of how those people are doing. And if you're the leader, and actually it would be very appropriate for, let's say, a shul rabbi gets hired to come to a shul that has whatever their customs are, valid customs, traditional customs, and there's not how he grew up. He has to follow the customs of the community. He doesn't come in and start saying, "Oh, this is what I always did, so I'm going to change it." Right? He has to do the community customs. That's one idea. Another he says is that when you have things that have to be taken care of, so really a leader for sure shouldn't say, I'll let them decide whatever they want to do, and that's how I'll go along with it. Whatever they decide, That's good enough for me. And interestingly, I think that applies to when you're working with a board a lot of times. So I remember years and years ago, I won't say where I was working, but a certain leader of that particular group, whatever it was like, whatever the board says, that's what I'm going to do, and it was kind of like, wait a second, you're supposed to be telling them, what's important. You're supposed to guide them when it comes to, this would have to do with certain practices in religious practice or whatever, how a school was going to do. It's like you can't just say, oh, they're going to decide whatever they want. You have to encourage them. You have to try to convince them that this is the right thing to do. You're in a leadership position. Your job is to say, this is what I think. Now, if they override you, it's one thing, but ultimately you're supposed to be part of the process and not just sit back and ignore it. So a leader does not say, whatever everyone else decides, that's what I'm going to do. A leader says, I think this is what we should do. This is my advice. I want to guide you. Look, you don't want to do it. I can if I've tried and I'm not successful, it's one thing, but I certainly can't just abdicate responsibility. Again, if they're suffering and you're not, then you should feel their pain. We have the famous story with Moshe, which we actually just read about yesterday on the Purim reading, the Torah reading we read on Purim, where with Amalek, when Moshe sat on stone, he didn't want to be comfortable with the Jewish people were at battle, so he sat on a stone without a cushion, right? And just to feel that everyone else is suffering. I feel it too. Number four, the Tiferes Yisrael points out is when you're praying for yourself, include others who have the same need as you. You have a need. There are many other people who have the same issues, whether it be illness, whether it be financial needs. Many other people have the same needs. So if you're praying for yourself, include everybody else that you can that would be under that thing. Hashem, help them too. Don't just help me. When we say the Mishaberach for those who are ill on Shabbos, right? We say Mishaberach, and we say B'soch Sha'ar Chola Yisrael, that these people heal these people amongst all of the other people who are ill in Israel, not just them, everybody. We want to include everybody in our prayer. And finally, he says, as a leader there's a certain status and a way a leader has to approach it. So there's a balance between being their buddies and being the leader. So you can't just you're not an equal. If you're a leader, you have to be one step above. On the other hand, you can't be so much above that that you're aloof and that you're not part of it. So you have to do a balance. You have to be very friendly. And on the other hand, there has to be an understanding that you're the leader. It's sort of like a parent and a child, or adults and children, right? There's a big difference between a child and an adult. And one of my pet peeves is, when I have children calling adults by their first name, especially their parents. But to call a child as a child and adults, there's a difference. You have to recognize that difference. And if a parent is trying to be the sibling of the child, usually it's not going to work. Very rarely will it work. There has to be a clear understanding. And it's the same thing with a leader. A leader has to be everyone has to recognize that ultimately that person is the authority. Yes, you got to be very friendly, and you want to be able to not be the authority who is so far removed, but there's a balance. So in general, don't separate from the community when things are going well for you. Because if you say, I don't need them, then when it comes time when you do need something, they're not going to be there for you either. So that's the thing. So finally, one other point we'll make for today is something from Reb Simcha Bunim of Peshiska. He says that an interesting concept. He says a worn coin. In the old days, coins were not necessarily like now, where a quarter is a quarter no matter what. In those days, a coin might not be worth something as much if it was worn. So, but if you're giving someone 100 coins and one of them is not so good, okay, so everyone accepts it. But if it's the only coin and you want to pay for something with that coin, the merchant is most likely not going to accept it. He's going to say, give me a good one. So a person who's alone, right, doesn't have the protection of the community. When you're part of the community, so all your little problems, you're not so perfect, goes in the wash. But if you're trying to stand alone, then if you're not perfect, then you're not going to be able to be accepted. And therefore, that's why it's so important to be part of the community so that all of your little challenges, whatever it is that you're not perfect about, okay, everybody will forgive it. It won't make such a big difference because you are part of the community. And we'll hold it there. Have a great day, everyone.